Welcome to the CoinSec podcast. On this week's episode, we are joined by Maurelian and Bernhard from ConsenSys to discuss all things smart contracts, including their security analysis tool for Ethereum smart contracts called Mythril. All that and more on episode number 14 of the CoinSec podcast.
You want to secure your assets.
We can crack the wallet.
Oh, we've done it before.
We've got rigs, character adversary, attribution mode.
With our private keys combined.
Building some kind of blockchain super weapon.
There's just a number of vulnerabilities that are in these smart contracts.
Math. It's probably secure.
They all secretly mine cryptocurrency.
What coin can I trust? Which one is cryptographically secure?
Don't roll your own crypto. CoinSec podcast. The CoinSec podcast is a podcast about cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies with a focus on securing them. Don't let the hum of our dual-purpose crypto miners / password crackers in the background disrupt your listening pleasure. Tonight, I have with me Mike Felch. What's up, Mike?
Hey, what's going on?
We've also got Steve Borosh. What's going on, Steve?
Doing well. Ready to do this episode. Sounds like it's going to be fun.
Yes, I know. I'm sorry. I'm like not leaving you guys much time to talk because I want to get to the ConsenSys guys. I've talked to you guys like every night for the past few months. So I'm excited to talk to these guys. We also have Ralph May. What's up, Ralph?
Hey, what's up? Super excited to be here. And this episode, excited to get this going.
Definitely. And I am Bo Bullock. And we are joined by two people from ConsenSys. So we have Maurelian and Bernhard. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hello.
Hey.
So thank you guys so much for coming on. I guess let's start out. Can you give us a little background on what you guys do and what kind of ConsenSys is all about?
How do we split this up, Bernhard?
I just let you answer by default and answer anything too specific. Is that fine?
Yeah, maybe I'll do the ConsenSys stuff, and you can do the hard technical questions.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Can you repeat the question now, please?
Yeah.
What we do at ConsenSys, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, background. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I actually until I joined ConsenSys, I was pretty much I've been keen on cryptocurrency and just peer-to-peer technologies in general for quite a while. I have a more mechanical engineering background, and was working my way. Started nerding out more and more, mostly self-taught in programming and security stuff. Got really heavily involved when I went to the DevCon 2 conference in Shanghai almost a year and a half now. That was really opportune. I met a lot of people. Happened to go to a security hackathon there, and that's how I sort of and then contributing to the Ethereum name service. I found a few kind of tricky bugs in there and got that thing off the ground. Well, I mean, that's too much credit to myself, but enjoying ConsenSys and started working on what became the Due Diligence group. So our bread and butter is auditing smart contract systems for people both at ConsenSys groups within ConsenSys and external clients. Since then, it's there's a lot of interesting stuff coming out of our own little group. I like to think that we are sort of like a little microcosm of ConsenSys, or that might be where we're headed over time.
Nice. So do you guys, I guess when it comes to auditing smart contracts, so this is something, kind of new to us still, because the four of us, we're all on the pen test side of things. We do pretty typical pen test work, internal assessments, network assessments, that kind of stuff. Uh-huh. So I'm fascinated to learn more about what kind of entails your audits for smart contracts.
Yeah.
Right.
So
go ahead, please.
Yeah, I actually have a pen test background myself. So I've been in pen testing, security assessment for almost 10 years, I think, vulnerability research. And I just discovered Ethereum less than a year ago, I think. but I just found it super interesting because I got kind of bored of testing web apps and mobile apps, etc. And it's just something new and very exciting, I think.
Yeah, you could ask Mike about his web apps he's been on for the last few weeks. He's we have kind of like an inner joke about like, having like a long string of web apps versus like, red team assessments and stuff. But anyways, continue.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
So,
yeah,
go ahead. I mean, I guess like kind of, if you wouldn't mind, I mean, I guess what exactly does an audit of a smart contract entail?
So this is where I think, like, I find it interesting getting Bernhard's sort of perspective on like what it looks like for him, because this ecosystem is so open and it's essentially code review. And at least like that's where it started with us: code review, test suite, and just like trying to find the exploitation path. But Bernhard's, like, what was interesting is like he just I think like saw like, wow, this binary is just like published on the blockchain. What can I find in here?
Awesome. Yeah,
that's where he was coming from it.
I think from the audits, the basic principle is not too much different from auditing web applications, but I would say it's more strict and more detailed, because smart contracts are not as complex as web applications by far, but they're also more critical. So you really have to make sure that everything always behaves as exactly as expected, right? Because first of all, you can never update them once they're deployed. And second, if there is any bug, then there are direct financial implications. And those can be huge. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars being lost. So, I would say it's necessary to be much more diligent.
So, have you guys seen we were talking a little bit about it last week, the decentralized application security project from NCC Group? It's kind of like the top 10. It's very similar to OWASP. And I was kind of curious.
Yeah, they actually.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. Ask your question. I'll save the thing, I'm sure.
I was just kind of curious to kind of get your take on, I guess, like, what is the state of vulnerabilities and like learning about new vulnerabilities in smart contracts? I mean, is that top 10 kind of the end all be all for you guys at this point, or are there new things you're finding as you're going through new smart contracts? You are like, wow, this is something I hadn't seen before.
We're still discovering new things all the time. I recently published a paper called "Smashing Smart Contracts for Fun and Real Profit." I think last week ago or so.
Awesome.
And there's it's a tribute to LF1. If you know him.
Yeah, he's
It also contains. So it also contains a few things that are really counterintuitive, I think, and are really interesting. So, and most of the things only get discovered live on the blockchain. So if you look at the DAO exploit, for example, 2016, that was the first re-entrancy bug that was exploited, and never had really thought about that type of vulnerability before it was actually too late. And over time, I think we're discovering more and more. So a lot of people are now aware of re-entrancy bugs, but there's a lot of other things that still get discovered and might still cause issues, I think.
I think they're not. It's like my perspective though is like it's I haven't seen. And I want to hear from you on this too, Bernhard, because like I don't know have as much experience just with the concept of like a taxonomy and classifications of bugs. But it feels to me like the things that we would come across now are more just like, unspecified behavior, like not thinking properly. But I feel like most of the things would be like, lack of access control here. So a whole new class of stuff like underflow or reentrancy, I don't feel like I've seen in a long time.
Well, for me, for example, the dynamic array stuff is very interesting. So, which is one of the things that I'm listing in my paper. So you have situations because of the way that address mapping to storage locations works in the virtual machine. You have situations where you can unintendedly write to certain memory locations, which is sometimes very surprising. It's a bit difficult to explain just in a couple of minutes without knowing the specifics of how the EVM works. But this might be one of the classes of bugs that might be emerging, or maybe there will be at least one at some point that will be exploited.
Is this like referencing like by index, like in the data array that's in the smart contract? Like, is that what you're
exactly? So you have something called dynamically sized arrays.
Yeah.
So they don't have a specific length initially, and so in the world state in Ethereum you have something called account storage, and this account storage is addressed by storage positions or indices, and this storage position is an unsigned integer. So usually what you have very often in a smart contract is a state variable called owner, which is an address that represents the owner of the smart contract, and this is very often at storage position 0 or 1 because it's one of the first state variables in the source. So in certain situations, if you have dynamically sized array, you can overflow the integer index into that into storage, and then it becomes 0 or 1. And if you can calculate that index exactly, then you might be able to overwrite.
Yeah, so like a write anywhere primitive.
Exactly, yeah.
Like a write primitive, and then you just pass in what you're looking to overwrite in that index as your owner address to kind of take over, to reassign ownership of it.
Exactly, yeah.
See, this is the reason why I like these smart contracts.
Yeah, a lot of interesting new stuff to discover.
There's like, I don't know, I feel like that kind of gets into the whole honeypot sort of world. Have you guys come across this at all?
Yeah, we talked about one, I think, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, where somebody pushed a smart contract and then basically backdoored it, where he did something, or they did something where there wasn't enough gas, and so everybody started to they put some coins out there. Was it?
Yeah, they put like $5,000 in an account, and then they pushed the private keys.
Minerva, I think.
Yeah.
Oh.
So everybody was sending coins at it in order to get the gas to kind of kick over, and then they were taking whatever was transferred into the smart contract and offloading it.
There's lots of those coming out. One I saw recently was, I found it very funny. So you could see the source on Etherscan, and it looked pretty normal and it looked exploitable. So like, as usual, you had to send in 1 Ether and then you could get out everything. Yeah. And so we deployed it locally and everything to check it out. And so we couldn't see anything wrong with it, and started debugging it in Remix and everything. But the bytecode just did something different than the source code, and we just didn't understand it. It didn't make sense. So there was one line which just had much more bytecode associated with it than it should have. And it turned out, like after quite a long time actually, that if you scrolled right in the source code window, then there was a lot of source code very far to the right with a lot of tabs that was hidden.
It's like a really long horizontal scroll. Yeah.
It
That's
was like,
awesome.
come on, really? But even if you copy pasted the source into another window, you wouldn't realize that you just didn't register.
Yeah, they fixed that like a few days after we came across that. Well, so good on them for that. Like Etherscan's horizontal scroll, like it now wraps the text when they show source code.
That's a good idea.
So I'm actually curious. This is a little bit off topic, or I guess not off topic. It's just a little bit different of a topic. I'm actually curious how many, I guess, smart contracts you guys seeing, like unique ones. I mean, are you seeing like a lot of companies that are trying to actually secure their stuff, or I mean, is it still relatively new and so there's not too many?
No, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people. We're really busy. Partially, we're really busy because we take our time with these things, and like so we don't have a huge throughput and capacity. But we work with we work primarily probably with like I'd say public chain companies. So 0x protocol. Aragon is a really big one we're doing right now. There's a pretty novel token sale contract that we that TrueBit is planning on using, which is it was actually based on a paper that Vitalik and the founder of TrueBit wrote called Interactive ICOs. Anyway, so we've been doing a lot of that, like the sort of like the Ethereum community work. Increasingly, we're also having enterprise projects come through from the ConsenSys solutions who want us to, take a look at their work as they're doing it for their enterprise clients.
So do you typically do you see the smart contracts coming through before they get pushed? Like, because that's the thing that I've always wondered is like, if you're doing an audit on something, and I always kind of like, was under the understanding that, like smart contracts are immutable, so they can't like go back and change them right after they've already posted them. So are you seeing them prior to them actually getting posted to like the live network?
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay.
Almost always. I mean, it's often like a week before they want to put it on the
well, of course.
mainnet.
Well, yeah, I mean that wouldn't be. I mean, it wouldn't be the security, part of this SPLC unless it was last minute.
Exactly. But yeah, so yeah, usually it's before it's deployed. We actually have this internal kind of debate about that because often like we want the code base frozen before we start looking at it. We want to actually feel like you're not still making little tweaks to it. But so some of the people I work with, we go back and forth, but are like they do want it deployed. And maybe like in a non-active state. So like if it's a token sale, you can't actually do anything with it yet. So that we can, when we do our audit, we can both say, yeah, this source code we looked at is creates identical bytecode to what's been published to the Ethereum mainnet. And then also it's just kind of a really hard commitment mechanism. Like if they published it, they deployed it, then like they're actually saying we're done and this is our code.
Right.
So are you guys like testing on like the test network? Then yeah.
Yeah, I mostly deploy them locally because that's the easiest thing, and then you can run on like a development network on your computer that that mines instantly. But yeah, that really makes life easier.
Very cool. Looks like I think Ralph, is this your question here?
Yeah. So I know you guys are working on a bunch of different projects, and a lot of these different projects may either help blockchain technology or help these different companies. So I guess my question for you guys is, what do you guys feel are some of the more important projects you guys have worked on, or that you feel will accelerate this? This whole industry as it is at this point?
I think that's a Bernhard question now.
Yeah. So the tool that I'm working on at the moment is called Mythril. And Mythril was originally supposed to be an Nmap for Ethereum. So basically something, it's just started out as a Python tool where you could like scrape the blockchain for vulnerable contracts. But then it soon made sense to also extend it to analyze Solidity source code. So now the direction it goes now is more into supporting developers and getting the tool into the secure SDLC and so on. And this work is just starting. So we are building the team for that right now. But we already have a couple of interesting releases. So there's Mythril, the Python tool itself, which you can use both to analyze Solidity code and on-chain deployed contract instances. We also have a public API that you can use if you don't want to install it too locally. And we're working on plugins for developers. So right now we have Visual Studio Code and Atom, I think, and so Sublime Text. And then you can just like hit the button in the IDE and you get back the analysis results. And it detects, I think, like about 10 or so classes of issues, including integer undead overflows, re-entrancy bugs, and so on. So yeah, that's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
This is funny because we've talked about Mythril on one of the first few podcasts, if I remember correctly. And when we brought, so we've been just kind of kicking around stuff on the like off the podcast with regard to digging more in, and we've talked about Mythril, and I've actually cloned it locally and had started playing with it because this is like something that I'm super passionate about. As it gets into like really digging into the contracts outside of just looking at source code and kind of taking it back to the bytecode and the control flow and symbolic execution and all of that. I haven't got to dig into it as much, but then I just put two and two together when I was looking at the Mythril GitHub and seeing your name there, that it just clicked that this is your guys' tool. So it's so funny that we've already kind of been kicking this tool around. And I didn't put two and two together before that. So very cool.
Yeah, we're also working on a couple of tools for auditors. So one thing where we now have an alpha release is a Symbolic Debugger. And so the UI looks like the normal Mythril call graph, but you can also like trace through all the instructions and inspect the symbolic trace. And we have also a couple of nice ideas what we can add to that. Like, for example, dynamic solving. Like you just right click onto a node in the graph and then you get the input data that you need to reach that point in the code and so on. So that's the cool thing about Ethereum Smart Contracts is that there's stuff works really well, because usually if you use symbolic execution on web apps and mobile apps, you get like state space explosion, and it's just too complex to analyze completely. But with smart contracts, it works really well, which is super cool. So I think we really have a chance this time to really get them secure and really get like stuff that is 100% secure, even that usually say it's not possible, but I think for smart contracts it might be possible as long as... You
mean like code coverage?
Yes, code coverage and like functional correctness, let's say, so that you can really be sure at least that you can prove that it's behaves 100% as intended, and in that sense that it is 100% secure, I guess.
That's interesting. So looking at smart contract functions and being able to do it as it relates to the smart contract, this is where the rubber meets the road for me, because I could understand it from that perspective. I could understand it from like following the function calls and understanding where data is getting pushed. The part where it starts to get it starts to drift off for me is when we start talking about like delegate calls and kind of the fallback functions that are part of Ethereum as as a whole, is there any of that EVM type exploration that you're starting to do with regard to like moving into that side, where like what's getting like inconsistency with the virtual machine kind of, or any of the compiler type problems that may arise outside of like your traditional smart contract app vulnerabilities? Are you moving more into like the core backend at all?
Yeah, we do. So a colleague of mine, Gerhard, he just kicked off a fuzzing project where he's trying to detect variances between different implementations of Ethereum, which is really interesting, I think, because if you have something like that, you might be able to intentionally cause a fork in the blockchain. And there's some interesting findings, I think, that he has already. But of course, we're also looking into like EVM specifics. So Mythril also models delegate calls and things like that, and tries to. It also has a very cool feature that I call dynamic loader. So if you have a delegate call or call in the contract, it can automatically resolve the dependencies and download the additional bytecode and then run the delegate call as well. So definitely important to account for that, obviously, because, for example, the parity bug last year, the first one, I think, included a delegate call proxy.
Right.
So that's also something we can detect.
This is so like, it's like for me, it's really nice to hear Bernhard talk about all this stuff, because like I remember a year ago, basically, like we had nothing in terms of security tooling. We just had like careful reading and kind of like maybe some simple kind of text search scripts for dangerous patterns. We didn't even really have a decent linter for Solidity a year ago. It's come a long way.
I think it's just now that like old school security people really get interested in Ethereum and start working on stuff. So, and I was at Hack in the Box last week, and there were already like a couple of talks about Ethereum, and people like it's becoming a thing in the security community, I think.
Yeah, so that actually brings up a question I had. So in regards to like somebody who wants to start looking into learning about, hacking smart contracts or finding security vulnerabilities in smart contracts, is there somewhere you would point them? It sounds like Mythril would be a good start, absolutely, like to look at for a tool. But like, is there something like a Metasploitable kind of thing where like there's a vulnerable contract and I don't know, like you can go about learning about the vulnerabilities in some way? Oh yeah.
Like one thing I'll plug is our best practices. We call it the ConsenSys Smart Contract Best Practices, and it's just like some really solid documentation, a bit along the lines of the DASP, actually.
Okay.
But like going into pretty good detail about all of the various vulns that you could look for. And then there's some really nice CTF kind of style sites out there. There's Ethernaut by our friends at Zeppelin. That's a really fun, polished one. Hackthiscontract.io, a bit rough around the edges, but it's and I saw one recently too. I don't remember what it is, but if I think of it, I'll bring it up. Did you guys? Okay, this is. I don't want to go off track, but like there was this really cool contract called the Gate or the Cyber, and it was sort of like if you could get through the little, like if you could actually successfully send a transaction to this contract, you kind of became part of a secret society in some way, and it was pretty tough. And it took me like a few hours to get through it. So yeah, that was very, very fun and very kind of a weird thing that is only possible on Ethereum, I think.
Nice. No, I didn't see that. But it sounds interesting. I mean, anything like puzzle related, we were talking about last night, anything puzzle related, like I'm always interested in, so.
Yeah, it was like drop everything. I like, because there was limited space kind of thing. I was like, I'm not going to be not part of like the cool inside group in this thing. So that's like not very noble of me, but had to do it.
It's fine.
But for learning, right? I don't know, Bernhard. What do you think? What are other good like learning resources?
I think you covered the most important ones.
They should read your
not challenges and yes, of course.
It's like 50 pages, but it was very fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and we can link to that on the website too, for anyone listening. Go grab for sure. So, all right. So we talked about Mythril. We talked about what you guys have done. Here's some more just general cryptocurrency questions for you guys. So, do either of you guys do any mining or trading at all?
Yeah, I do a little bit of Zcash mining with a couple of 1080 Ti's.
That's like I'm mining Zcash at the moment as well.
It's not very profitable, to be honest.
That's not profitable at all right now.
but it's fun, right? It's fun. That's why we do it.
It is. That's the reason why I do it as well. Yeah. Otherwise, I would just buy coins somewhere.
Yeah. So my whole argument is that because of like what we do for living, like it's really just buying itself as a password cracker. Like in the end, it's basically just paying for itself. It's like that's how I convinced my wife. I was like, so this is for work, really. It's gonna pay for itself. Trust me.
Yeah. My problem a little bit is that I live in Thailand and it's really hot. So this mining rig, it really heats things up a lot in the living room. So, but.
And Maurelian, do you
turn on the air conditioning?
No, I don't mind. But I live in Canada. Like I really should. I've just never really got around to setting it up.
How much space do you have?
In Canada?
And how much power? Yeah, no, not in Canada. I mean, you could start a little business. We'll send you some mining rigs, and you can just hook up there, keep them nice and cool for us.
I'm outside.
In Canada, that's funny.
What did you mean by how much space?
Like, I was just kidding. Like, how much space do you have at your house or something? We'll send you some mining rigs, and you can hook them up for us.
Okay.
Yeah, we talking like warehouse size space or like closet size. I mean,
it's it's a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah, so we could fit a good 30 miners in there.
My office has some room.
Keep you nice and warm.
Yeah, and I'm wearing a sweater, so there's some layers I could shed.
Free heat.
That's always been the argument that I thought was most compelling. Absolutely. Free heat.
It's probably not the most efficient, but.
So, any trading? Either of you guys do any trading, or just like holding coins, or do you have any certain? I mean, besides obviously, you guys are. I mean, I would imagine you guys are at least into Ethereum being smart contract auditors.
Yeah. Trading stresses me out. When I'm trying to play prices, I don't get any work done. So I'm pretty conservative in that area, unfortunately, and not very interesting.
Yeah. Same here. So I don't believe in day trading and technical analysis. I think it's all bullshit.
Same here. I don't understand how people are applying stock market theories to the this kind of market. I just don't think it applies. But
even on the stock market, it doesn't really work, I think.
It's a gamble. It's a gamble, right? Yeah, sure.
I mean, everything
like
pretty
astrology.
much. it all just moves the same way anyways. Like I'm kind of looking at it. It's like all the currencies are like they move relative to one another to some extent, but mostly it's just like all up or all down any given day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially unpredictable. But I think holding good projects makes sense.
I was gonna say unless McAfee, pumps a coin, right?
Yeah, but you don't know that in advance, right?
Right.
Unless
you pay $115 to tweet. Isn't that the price, right? It's $115 per tweet, I think.
I think that's about what I saw. Yeah.
It's crazy. So, all right. What do you guys see as the biggest problem in terms of security for the whole cryptocurrency ecosystem? Not just specifically smart contracts, but like anything related to wallet security, exchanges, anything in this entire industry. What do you guys see as the biggest security problem?
I'd say they are all big problems. So especially everything that's facing the end user. I mean, exchanges obviously, but also it's very difficult for average or for normal people, non-tech people to keep their coins safe. So I think that's a huge problem.
Usability.
Usability and awareness, and just making things safe and easy for people to use. I think that's the main challenge, and it's also what's needed for adoption.
Yeah, one of our someone else at not part of our team, but at ConsenSys wrote this like guide to securing your cryptocurrency, and it's like it's hardcore. Like it's like that's a weekend worth of work to like get a separate, like buy a new machine or something and like set up tails on it, and then jump through a few other hoops.
Burner phones,
it's totally,
burying your key in your backyard. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, you have to like hide under a blanket the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. At 30,000 feet.
so yeah, like usability, I think is just huge. And I don't know, like hardware wallets are nice. That's a good improvement. That's the big one that comes to my mind.
I'm really scared too sometimes. If you recently I read about Ledger Nano generating wrong public keys for you also, and it's really stressed me out because I have everything on a Ledger Nano. So if you can't even trust those hardware wallets, I mean you can still expect bugs in them. Right?
I'm sure you guys saw a couple of vulnerabilities that popped up like a couple weeks ago. Regarding like like in transit, like if somebody modified it and tampered with it, some of the things they could do.
Yes.
Yeah. That's happening a lot. So Ledger sold on eBay with pre-printed seeds and or modified firmware. So it's really scary, I think.
I think like paper might be the way to go. There's this like this neat, it's called the Piper wallet. I don't know if they still make them even, but it's like basically just an air gapped Raspberry Pi connected to a receipt printer, and it just prints out paper wallets for you.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's like that. It's stupid easy. Just
I saw somebody with that on like a briefcase at DEF CON one time.
Yeah.
But then you got to worry about like the printer spool.
Yeah.
I think it's so funny that we're developing all of this technology to get rid of paper, and then the way that we secure it, it has to be on paper. We're like, that's just how we're going to save it. I don't know. I just think it's funny. We want to get rid of, the paper currency that we deal with today, and and I know it's more than that, obviously, but the way we're going to secure it, going back to paper.
Yeah.
It's funny.
It's like you trust, I don't know, like nobody embedded any weirdness in the paper on its way to you. It's simple.
Yeah.
I guess it's like, I think everything is like, most of the security risks are complexity related in some way. and that's like in general, like, your question was broader, but for me, like smart contract security, the thing that sort of scares me coming up is like increasingly like people just with very ambitious projects that are pretty complex, and it's going to be hard to find the issues in them.
Sure. And then from a pen test red team perspective, I'm looking more at how secure are the developers creating that stuff. We've seen some unnamed coins that I won't mention anymore because I beat up on them pretty bad in the past, but their devs get hacked, and and then there goes their code or their Twitter account and defaming the company or taking their intellectual property and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
like, seriously, all it takes is like getting into anyone's GitHub account, and then like you could destroy a coin, like you could fork a coin as easy. It'd be super easy.
Yeah, the centralized risks. All right, the ecosystem is more centralized than it likes to think it is.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool.
What about you guys? Like, what are you? You asked about like trading and stuff. What sort of other technologies or coins are you interested in?
I'll let Steve take that one because I know he's itching to talk about some things.
Sure. Yeah. I've been actually playing around with Raven coin lately. It's one that I believe Overstock.com CEO is investing heavily in, and it's more space on the blockchain where you can actually trade assets on the blockchain and actually store more data on it. So I think it's interesting that people are going to start using it for things like that. And I just mine about whatever seems interesting and not really profitable, but just fun to mine, and I like to watch the numbers go up. So it depends on the week, but this week it's Raven coin. I think it's I just like the different technologies and the different coins. For a while it was Komodo, and it's I don't know. It just changes every week. So ask me next week, and I'll have a different answer.
Yeah,
and that's what I love about it is there's so much technology and ideas coming out that it's just drinking through a funnel trying to keep up with everything that's happening in the ecosystem. So it's just fun to keep up with, and try to balance your day job of pen testing and red teaming, and then try to figure out what the heck is going on with the crypto world.
Yeah, it's I don't know, keeping up. I gave up on keeping up a long time ago, but I think when I do find some time to like dig into some other like just very different technology, it's always very fascinating. I feel like I don't know. I just feel like I need to go deep in this one. Like I feel such a sense of responsibility because of how much money's on the line. It's like I should just know this stuff really, really well.
Do you guys look at any other coins or blockchains that are using decentralized apps, or are you just sticking mainly with Ethereum? For now, I like people come to us because like we're so closely associated with Ethereum. It's not that we, like if somebody came to us from like say Ethereum Classic, and well, I don't know, maybe that's I just should be careful there. Quite controversial in a large company. But like some other sort of like, especially like an EVM driven blockchain, Ethereum virtual machine, and we had capacity and it was an interesting project. Yeah, we'd look at it. Cool.
I guess like coming up stuff that I'm excited about along those lines is EWASM. So it's like for a long time, there's been talk about porting or somehow trying to like bring WASM WebAssembly onto the blockchain so that we could write contracts in things like Rust and C++. And there are I think that's what EOS is doing. Yeah, and like other sort of next gen blockchains are looking at doing And so I'm pretty interested in that and like what the implications of that are, and I'm trying to like pick up Rust in my spare time to get a handle on it.
And that's something that's basically being added to Ethereum.
Yes, it depends who you ask, and it's something that has been worked on for quite a while. And I thought it went quiet, and then it's just like suddenly picked up in a big way after a conference that happened in France a month ago or something. Like suddenly everybody was talking about EWASM again.
Oh wow!
And so yeah, so that's that, and it's super weird, like just to think about it, because it's like, you know, there's going to be two virtual machines on the same blockchain somehow, and there's like talk about like a specific pre-compiled contract built into the nodes that like would do transpiling, and then like, you know, WASM doesn't have like a gas metering kind of feature. Well, I mean, you could build that, but so like it's when you deploy a WASM contract, another pre-compiled contract would like add in code that does the gas cost metering stuff. A lot of like it's weird stuff, but like it's pretty cool. I find it really fascinating.
So how does something like that get added in to Ethereum though? Like, is that like a fork?
Yeah. Well, so last I heard, they thought that there was a way that, I mean, it has to be. Yeah, it has to be a fork. It has to be a fork. Yeah.
Interesting.
And forking is always an interesting. Fork season is a fun time of year.
Fork season.
Let me ask you, what are you guys' opinions on forking for reasons due to things like parity, or reasons due to things like Monero forking due to like ASICs entering the market? Like, do you think that's a good thing to just I guess like be like the better evil, right? Like try to, you know, give people back their money or prevent, you know, ASIC miners from controlling the network, that kind of thing.
Bernhard, I've talked a lot, I think, in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, that's an ideological question. I think for me it's very difficult to answer. So I tend to be on the side of not forking off the blockchain and it being more decentralized and just working as intended. But I understand how it would make sense, or how there are incentives or reasons to roll it back sometimes. So one very contentious discussion at the moment is EIP. Forgot the number, but
999.
Something like that.
It is 999. It's like upside down mark of the beast.
Wait, what is this? What?
Oh, it's the number of the proposal.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So yeah.
I'm not sure if this is the one I'm talking about, but you know, there's a proposal that resulted from last year's second parity bug, where I think $350 million worth of Ether were frozen in the contract, and that included ICO proceedings from a couple of projects, I think Polkadot and Musiccoin. So some of those projects have now initiated an EIP called Ethereum Funds Recovery Proposal, I think, where the goal is to introduce a process to handle situations like this and have like things in place that can recover lost funds. And this already caused a lot of drama over the last month or so. So,
right.
One of the EIP editors stepped down, I think, Yoichi, over this EIP, and there's still no outcome to it as far as I know. I mean, most of the community is against it, I think, was my impression.
I think that EIP was pretty soundly rebuked, and is sort of hibernating for now. But there's 999 that I was referring to is it's only 4 days old. Parity posted it, and it restore contract code at address 0x863df, etc. So like the self-destructed contract that held the logic behind the Parity wallet, where the guy came along and was like, I accidentally killed your contract.
Yeah.
So they've got a patched version, and the fork would just be like, let's just put this back where it was.
And unlock everything,
Yeah.
Wow.
So I feel really, my like, I don't know, the DAO thing. If you talk to people at ConsenSys who were at ConsenSys during like the DAO, they're almost traumatized by it. They wasted like it wasn't a ConsenSys project, but it was such a small community at the time that like they lost at least a month of productivity just talking and arguing and debating and thinking about, you know, what it meant and how to deal with it. And so for me, it's like the idea that we become, as Bernhard referred to this other proposal for like a standard process to evaluate these things. I'm like to me, the amount of debate and argument that happens around these is so exhausting. Like, I just don't want for this community to move into this place where it's like we have to have this discussion all the time and like assess whether or not this is a valid reason to fork. And I almost like restore contract code at an address. That's fairly straightforward, but you get, you know, like slippery slopes are like, that is a thing. Like, they happen, and you change the norms of a community. And it's like, there was a cool blog post by Alethio, who were who's like a really amazing blockchain data analytics group at ConsenSys. And so they looked at like funds that were sent to I think it's like to addresses that basically, like, through data analysis they could prove that it was like mistyped, that it was a typo. And there's a lot of money in typo addresses. So like, what are we gonna do about that?
Yeah, it's tough. Stuff gets locked.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't want to spend my time thinking about it. I just want to like make things work and
Same here.
stick to it. So the other side of the argument, though, is like, and I like to be able to speak to the other side so that I understand it, but it's like that as much as it's like this machine-based distributed consensus, ultimately at the base layer, it's like social consensus and like people running the network. And if people think that this is better, they can sign up to basically, you know, invest in and hang out with the blockchain that best reflects their views. And, you know, in one person's desired history, Parity can get their contract code back, and in another person's, it's not there. It's weird stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, that's all there is to say.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, I was
No,
curious.
that's awesome.
So let's see, Steve, I think you might have a couple more questions in there. I don't know if we're kind of actually getting close to time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, I'm curious what you guys think is really the next step for mass adoption of blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. Where do you think the next big breakthrough is going to come?
It's been I think it's still identity. That's a problem that people have been working on for a long time. So basically just like getting kind of like proper it's hard for me to understand, like explain it, but like the self-sovereign identity and like your own ability to, you know, be like, this is me on the blockchain and these are the people that think that I'm a good person. and should be trusted, and that you can interact with. And so it's like, you move towards owning your identity instead of being dependent on a government for that identity and the possibility of it being revoked. And it really starts to unlock a lot of possibilities. This is like sort of the base layer, but when that's in place, that should make a lot of things.
Yeah, it might reduce identity fraud like that too.
As long as it doesn't turn into that Black Mirror episode where they got like the swipes and you get like points and rated and stuff.
Man, like I can't watch the Black Mirror because I just always think that I'm building it.
Right? Seriously, I mean, it's definitely the future, but I mean, yeah, no, that one episode where the chick has the rating system where like everyone has like a rating. Everyone has like they're rated like a certain number, and like if you're like under a certain number, you can't even come to work. Like if you're like rated under a 2, like you're not even allowed to work.
So like Uber.
Yeah, right. Yeah, basically. But for everything in life, right? Like, so walking around and just like, hey, oh, you smiled at me, let me give you a star or something.
Wow. Yeah, I saw a good episode of Community, like it's the community college. It was the same thing, and I watched it just because they had like this app where they could rate everybody, and like people's lives were ruined and made. But
so, I mean, I totally agree about the identity thing, though. I mean, that's it's definitely interesting. I mean, if there was, so the biggest problem, right, is that like right now, it's really everyone's social security number, at least here in in the U.S., like is like everywhere, right? I mean, it's not hard to find information about people. So how do you translate something like a social security number or some piece of identification that is unique to a person into blockchain and still make it so that they own it and nobody else can take that away from them and steal their identity?
So Uport is one of the sort of like leading projects in this space. There's a lot of people working on it, but so I understand their system, and essentially like they use a contract to represent you. So this contract acts as a proxy for you. If you have like a plain old address that is associated with your private key, you can lose that private key. The idea with the contract is that it can be recoverable through like smart contract mechanisms. But they've also moved towards, I think, having some like off-chain mechanisms using Samir's secret sharing scheme that they're trying to make user friendly. But basically the idea is that your identity is in this contract, and if you get the system right, the control of the contract is recoverable. I do think getting the system right is a hard problem. Gotcha.
Cool. Well, we're actually running out of time. We went all the way up to our hour with you guys, and I think it was awesome. I mean, I really, really, really appreciate you guys for coming on. Maurelian and Bernhard, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight, man.
Sure.
Yeah,
Thanks
absolutely.
For having us.
If there's one thing I can say, like if I can get a plug in, we are hiring. So I don't know, just like find me on Twitter at Maurelian, or no, don't do that. Go to our diligence.consensus.net and click on careers.
Nice. So just telling everyone that you have your DMs open and just send you as much direct messages as possible.
Yes.
Or if you don't want to join ConsenSys right away, you can also start contributing to Mythril, which is open source and MIT license. So be very happy if people join the project.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, like we tend to like hire people who are already contributing and active in the space. So that's
great.
Do what Bernhard said.
Yeah, I got one last question for you guys. So this is more of like a fun question. All right, so in one sentence or less, who is Satoshi Nakamoto?
Not Craig Wright.
Yes.
Perfect.
All right, guys. Well,
Yeah.
and Maurelian, did you want to give that one a go too?
No, I'm gonna. Yeah, Bernhard was right.
Cool. All right. Well, that's it for this episode of CoinSec Podcast. Make sure to go follow Maurelian and Bernhard. So Maurelian _ and Mueller Bern on Twitter. We're on Twitter, CoinSec Podcast. Keep an eye on CoinSecPodcast.com for the links. I'm going to get all the links that we talked about. I'll go grab. You guys have a careers page that I can post? Yep. So I'll post the careers page. We'll post the GitHub stuff about Mythril. You can go subscribe to the podcast, and that's it. So, guys, thanks again for joining us. It was a blast.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was really fun.
Thank you.
Awesome. We will see you. Well, not you guys, but we'll see. Hopefully, the 5 listeners are listening. We'll see them next week. So, see you guys next week.
All right. Take care.